All right, hello everyone. The purpose of this video is just to introduce one of the options for your final project, which is to use a machine learning or statistical learning algorithm or method called k-nearest neighbors. And so the reason we're doing k-nearest neighbors as opposed to some of the other choices we might have is first that it's very intuitive, and so we only have a couple weeks for this final project, and so the method is, I think, intuitively pretty easy to think about. The second is that it's commonly used for a response variable that's categorical and has more than two categories. And so that's useful for our purposes because if you took Stat 213, which I know many of you have, you've done prediction using a quantitative response, and you've done prediction with a categorical variable with just two categories using logistic regression. And so this should be kind of brand new to everyone unless you've seen this in some other context or some other class. The example that we're doing is an example with the Pokemon dataset that we looked at in week 9 with 4cats. And what we're going to use as our response is type. And so just to simplify things, we're only going to consider 4 different Pokemon types. So we're just going to consider Dark, Fire, Ice, and Steel. And just to start out, we're going to suppose that we have 15 Pokemon in our data set, and we want to predict the Pokemon's type from just one predictor, Defense. And so if you look on the next page, you'll see kind of this one-dimensional plot that just shows Pokemon's defense values, where they're colored and have different shapes for the 4 types. So we kind of see that Steel-type Pokemon tend to have high defense, while it looks like Ice and Dark and most of the Fire tend to have lower defense values. So what we want to do is suppose that we get a new Pokemon that we want to predict the type for. And so we're going to suppose that we get Dialga. I didn't look that up even between when I made the last video without sound and this one, but Dialga, as I'll call him or her. And we know that Dialga has a defense stat of 120. And so they're plotted here with a big black X. The k-nearest neighbors method with k equals 1, so we'll set k equal 1. That indicates how many neighbors we're going to use in our prediction. So for k equals 1, that means we're just using the one nearest neighbor, and so we're looking at the point that's closest to this black X. That turns out to be this green triangle. They look like they're practically on top of each other. And so our prediction would be Fire. And so the reason is that's the value of the one nearest neighbor. And so you might be thinking, okay, well, what if we kept this one predictor as defense, but maybe we want to increase k? So instead of the one nearest neighbor, we're going to look at maybe k equals 3 to look at the 3 nearest neighbors. That might be a better way to predict because it kind of takes into account more of the surrounding points than just the single point that this k equals 1 would rely on. And so our prediction for k equals 3, we have one green triangle and then 2 purple plus signs as our 3 nearest neighbors. And so our prediction would be Steel. And the reason is because the plus sign appears the most among the 3 nearest neighbors. So you could kind of keep going, and like maybe you want to consider k equals 5. Then it looks like green triangle, plus sign, circle, plus sign look to be the nearest neighbors. And so again, your prediction would be steel because it has 3 of the 5 nearest neighbors for k equals 5. Okay, so what we'll do in the next video is see how this extends to more than one predictor and just kind of see how that changes things for this particular method.